When the first Zelda game was released in the late 1980s, we were introduced to our silent protagonist Link. At that time he didn't talk, and it wasn't a big deal because no characters talked in video games because of the technological limitations, but over the course of 30 plus years, Link's incarnations have evolved, but he has continued to be silenced. Does he actually talk? Can he still be considered a silent protagonist? And should he be given a voice in future Zelda games? Let's go! I'm just gonna cut right to the chase. Link does talk, and let's start with the most recent example. In Breath of the Wild, in Princess Zelda's diary, it reads, "When I finally got around to asking why he's so quiet all the time, I could tell it was difficult for him to say, but he did. With so much at stake and with so many eyes upon him, he feels it necessary to stay strong and to silently bear any burden, a feeling I know all too well. For him, it has caused him to stop outwardly expressing his thoughts and feelings. I wish to talk with him more and to see what lies beneath those calm waters, to hear him speak freely and openly." Let's also look at some examples from past games. In Skyward Sword, we get to choose our reply dialogue. How would a person know what Link is saying if Link can't talk? Then in Wind Waker, Link says, "Come on!" And he also meows to make Mila think he is a cat. It's a side quest on Windfall Island to get a bottle. In Ocarina of Time, Child Link meets up with Nabooru at the Spirit Temple entrance and has conversations and makes choices. Also in Ocarina of Time, he told Saria that the Great Deku Tree summoned him. In Link to the Past, if you try to pick up a false Master Sword, you get text that shows Link talks. And in Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, we get two examples, once again with text like Link to the Past. One reads, "It looks like I found a mirror under this table," and then the other reads, "Looks like I can get in the fireplace." In many Zelda games, NPCs have reactions to what Link says, and then he also talked in the cartoon series that lasted 13 episodes in 1989. According to IMDb, Nintendo of America was given a production company credit for the cartoon. Now, the cartoon was actually produced by DIC Entertainment and distributed by Viacom Enterprises in association with Nintendo of America. So Nintendo was obviously connected to the cartoon, and they had the power to not make Link talk, but he did talk in the cartoon, and it would have been awkward if he didn't talk, and I'll kind of touch on the awkwardness later on in this video. Now, an argument can be made that Link talks in the CDI games, but those games aren't recognized by Nintendo. They were not designed for Nintendo platforms. Those games owe their existence to negotiations related to Nintendo's decision not to have Philips create a CD add-on to the Super Nintendo. And during those negotiations, Philips secured the rights to use Nintendo characters in CDI third-party developer games. So the question now becomes, is Link a silent protagonist? Let's first put a focus on if Link could be considered a mute. Being mute falls more towards the line of not being able to speak. The word mute comes from the Latin word mutus, meaning unable to speak. However, there are some medical definitions that also characterize it as an unwillingness to speak. For the sake of this video, I'm going to focus on mute being the inability to speak and being silent as the unwillingness to speak. So a better classification for Link is that he is silent over mute. Mute is a medical condition. Silent is more of a choice. If Link was mute, every incarnation would have to have that same medical issue. So in the hero being chosen, one of the main characteristics is that he must not have the ability to speak. I just don't really care for that concept, and from earlier in the video, we know Link talks. So now that we've ruled that Link isn't a mute, is he a silent protagonist? The Google definition of silent is of a person not speaking, not expressed aloud. So Link does speak, but it's not expressed aloud. So it's already a little confusing based on that definition. And if you didn't know, protagonist, it basically means the hero. Google's definition is an advocate or a champion of a particular cause or idea. Now Wikipedia, they expand even further on the definition of a silent protagonist. They They say it's a player character who lacks any dialogue for the entire duration of the game, with the possible exception of occasional interjections or short phrases. In some games, especially visual novels, this may extend to protagonists who have dialogue but no voice acting like all other NPCs. A silent protagonist may be employed to lend a sense of mystery or uncertainty of identity to the gameplay, or to help the player better identify with them. Silent protagonists may also be anonymous. Not all silent protagonists are necessarily mute or do not speak to other characters. They may simply not produce any dialogue audible to the player. So according to this, and I think that's a really good definition, we can say that Link does talk, but he is also a silent protagonist. He is meant to be our avatar within the game, and he's called Link because he is a link between you and the game. Players are expected to put themselves into the role of the silent hero, and since the player does not talk in-game, neither does the on-screen avatar, and they lack dialogue to reduce their personality to a minimum. That helps you project yourself onto the character. Now, Link is an avatar. He doesn't look like many players. How could I feel like he's a link between me and Hyrule? I don't have pink hair, or wear a green hat, or even wear tunics. If Nintendo wants you to project yourself onto the character, then we shouldn't see Link's face and his characteristics. Zelda games actually should be first person. Now, I would hate that because I hate first person games, but that's the concept that should apply. So now the hard question becomes, should Link talk in future Zelda games or should he not? Silent protagonists were popular in early games because the plot and mechanics were all picture and motion based, and as I said earlier, technology was limited at the time. But the formula for open world games and games in general is evolving, and Zelda games are becoming increasingly cinematic, and Link's silence is becoming more of a burden for storytelling, and the cutscenes with Link are just becoming somewhat awkward, and I really felt that with Breath of the Wild. Now, some would say it goes against tradition to have Link talk, but Breath of the Wild broke many traditions and brought a new formula to Zelda. Others state really immersion in a game requires a character to speak, since in similar situations the player would naturally vocalize. In Breath of the Wild, did Link start to transition from avatar to established character? Link's character could grow so much more with him talking, and in past Zelda games, Link has started to show more and more facial expressions. If he's an avatar, he shouldn't have a personality, and there's different incarnations of Link, so if Nintendo did give him a voice and it was a bad voice, you could just change it in the next game with the next incarnation. I didn't think voice acting was too bad in Breath of the Wild. That's just my opinion. I know some people had a problem with Zelda's voice acting, but most did seem to like the champion's voice acting. Now, we do have some other options. We could have a game where we hear Link's voice in his head. He would have a voice, but he's actually not talking, so he still would be considered a silent protagonist. That might be a good test for fan reaction. I'm not huge on it, but it is an idea. And then another option we could have is to turn off voice acting and just have subtitles. That would please both sets of fans. Now it's time for you, the viewers, to chime in. Do you also believe Link talks? Do you think he can still be considered a silent protagonist? Should he be given a voice in future Zelda games or not? How should the cinematics be handled going forward? Let me know your ideas and opinions down in the comments, and let's keep this interesting conversation going.